Maybe you clicked out of curiosity, or maybe, without even realizing it, you were looking for a quiet space, a place where the words come gently and the silence is part of the story too. I wrote this piece with care, like stitching together memories, wounds, and small truths, hoping that somewhere along the way you'll find a part of yourself in it. And if that happens, even just for a moment, stay. Listen as long as it feels right. And if you feel like it, leave a trace. It doesn't have to be much. Sometimes a simple, "I'm here" in the comments means more than you think. And if this story speaks to you, share it, like it, maybe even subscribe. Not for the numbers, but so it can reach someone else who needs a quiet moment too. My name's Nain Morrison. I'm 64 years old, and for the past 35 years, I've built something I never thought possible. A health tech company from scratch. Vital Bridge. We started in a cramped garage behind a pediatric clinic in Austin. Now, we provide AI-integrated diagnostic software to over 200 hospitals nationwide. I was never the genius engineer or the brilliant coder. I was the woman who saw the gaps, the system failures that left patients behind, and found people smarter than me to help fix them. I led. I built. I sacrificed. Now, after decades of 14-hour workdays, I was finally ready to step down as CEO. I wasn't planning a big announcement or press release. I wanted it to be quiet, respectful, internal. Just a transition to the next generation. My son, Wade. Wade's 35, soft-spoken but razor-sharp. A biomedical engineer with a mind for systems and a heart for people. He's not flashy, not political, exactly what Vital Bridge needs. He's been in the company for 7 years now, and the staff respects him. I did everything I could to raise a leader, not a legacy hire. And frankly, it felt right. He didn't ask for it. He earned it. So, at our 35th anniversary gala, hosted in a minimalist rooftop space downtown, clean lines, soft lighting, a curated jazz trio in the corner, I was ready to soak in what we'd built. I had just finished thanking the board, shaking hands with our hospital partners, and making a quick toast when I noticed something across the room. Ember, my daughter-in-law, Wade's wife of 3 years. She's complex. Beautiful, yes. Charismatic, definitely. She used to work in investor relations before she pivoted into strategy consulting. Her resume reads like someone trying to look impressive rather than be impressive. I never disliked her, but I never truly relaxed around her either. Something about her energy always felt a little performative. Anyway, there she was, in a black silk jumpsuit, laughing softly and holding a champagne flute like it was part of a staged photo shoot. She was talking with Damon, my husband of 42 years, and COO of Vital Bridge. They were standing closer than I expected. Intimate, but not inappropriate. Not quite. Ember touched his wrist while she said something, and he smiled in that way he used to when he was courting me. Only, it didn't reach his eyes. And when she noticed me watching from across the room, she didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She didn't wave. She held my gaze just for a second too long. Then she smiled. Not warm, not apologetic. Just a small, tight-lipped smile that said, "Yes, I see you. And I don't care." It rattled me, not because I thought they were doing something wrong, necessarily, but because something wasn't right, and I knew it in my bones. Later that night, Wade came to my table, excited. "Mom," he said, "Ember's been helping me outline a 3-year strategic plan. I think it could be a solid foundation when I step up next quarter." I nodded, smiled, told him I was proud, but my stomach turned. It started with an email, not a confrontation, not a revelation, just an email, a mistake. It was a Wednesday morning. I was working from my home office, halfway through reviewing a vendor contract for our new imaging AI rollout. My inbox pinged. Subject line: Agenda for Friday, Private Counsel Review. From McCarter@ThompsonLawPartners.com to Damon@VitalBridge.com, Ember@VitalBridge.com, and me. I opened it automatically, assuming it was routine. But the content wasn't routine. Not even close. Per your request, please find attached a draft outline for succession protections and transitional authority. As discussed, this structure keeps existing board members in place and bypasses family-based voting rights in the event of sudden leadership change. I've also flagged the bylaws you wanted reviewed, particularly those concerning founder equity clawback. See notes under Section 4.2.3. I reread it twice. By the time it sank in, my hands had stopped moving over the trackpad. What the hell was this? There was no Friday meeting on my calendar, no board memo. And why was my daughter-in-law, who had no formal role at VitalBridge, receiving confidential legal documents about restructuring founder authority? I didn't respond. I didn't even breathe hard. Instead, I opened our corporate directory and searched. Strategic Advisory Council. Sure enough, a new name had been added 2 weeks ago. Ember R. Morrison, Executive Strategy Consultant Approval Signature, Damon Morrison. That's when I leaned back in my chair, not angry, not even hurt yet, just aware, and suddenly wide awake. That evening, Wade dropped by the house. He still had his badge clipped to his jacket, half-loosened tie, looking tired but happy to see me. We ate dinner on the patio like we used to, just the two of us. At one point, over roasted chicken and sweet corn, he looked up and said, "Mom, can I ask you something? Be honest." "Always." "Do you think I'm ready to lead the company?" I tilted my head. "You've been preparing for this for years." He hesitated. "Ember thinks maybe I'm not cut out for it, that I'm too soft, not assertive enough." He said it casually, like he didn't want it to land hard, but it did. She'd gotten to him, and I could tell. He was starting to doubt himself. "She says leading in healthcare means knowing when to play tough, and I don't know. Sometimes I do feel like I avoid conflict too much." I put my fork down, looked at him carefully. "Wade, listening before speaking doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous in a room full of people who think yelling is strategy." He smiled faintly, but I saw the uncertainty lingering in his eyes, and something in me hardened. That night, after he left, I opened the cabinet in my office labeled Founder Materials. Inside were binders, flash drives, meeting transcripts, a dusty copy of our original corporate charter dated June 1989, back when all we had was an idea and a borrowed server rack. I plugged in a hard drive and began copying files to an encrypted backup. Governance documents, voting rights records, equity breakdowns. Every clause I ever wrote to protect this company from outside acquisition, from malicious control, from betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't rage, but I was starting to understand something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't about succession anymore. This was a takeover. It was a Sunday afternoon when Sage called. Honestly, I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. She was Ember's older sister, 4 years senior, lived in Dallas, worked in forensic accounting for a private firm that audited corporate compliance cases. We'd always been polite at family holidays. She brought the pie. I made the roast. That was about it. So when I picked up and heard her say, "Nan, I need to talk to you. Privately. In person?" I knew it wasn't casual. She came by that evening. No makeup, hair pulled into a low bun, sleeves rolled up like she'd driven straight from a client's site. Her eyes were tired. Her voice was quiet. I offered coffee, but she waved it off. We sat in the den, and she didn't waste time. "I found something. I wasn't snooping. I swear. I was staying with Ember last week while my apartment was being fumigated." She left her briefcase open. I raised an eyebrow. "She carries a briefcase now?" Sage gave a dry laugh. "It's all part of the brand." executive strategist. Anyway, she went out to take a call, and I saw a printout she'd tucked inside. Board composition documents, voting alignment charts, founder equity notes. I said nothing, just listened. Nan, they're trying to push through a restructuring proposal, one that redefines legacy leadership in a way that removes your protections. Ember's already drafted language for dissolving the founder voting clause. Damon's initials were on the margin notes. My heart didn't pound. I'd seen enough already to know the ground was shifting. But hearing it from Sage, of all people, confirmed what I feared. Ember wasn't just playing smart. She was playing long. And she wasn't acting alone. Sage took a deep breath, pulled out a folded packet from her bag. I made copies of what I saw. I know that's a gray area legally, but it felt wrong not to. I opened the packet and scanned the first page. Header: Contingency Leadership Plan, VB Board Restructuring Draft V3. There it was, in Ember's own formatting style. Bullet points, color-coded risk mapping. One note read, Position Wade as emotionally unstable. Recommend transition to neutral party DM until board appoints permanent CEOI. Looked up at Sage. Her jaw was tight. She's trying to paint him as unfit, overly idealistic, not assertive enough. She's feeding the board curated examples of emotional volatility. The goal is to move Damon in, then herself once the dust settles. I felt my throat tighten. Not because I didn't expect it, but because Wade, the most principled person I know, was being packaged as a problem in his own mother's company. And Damon? I asked. He's playing along. Ember says she's helping him revitalize the brand. She's been sitting in on board prep calls. She doesn't even have an official seat, but they're letting her influence policy. Sage leaned forward. Nan, I'm not loyal to Ember. Not anymore. I love Wade like a brother, and I've watched you build this company since I was a teenager. I won't stay silent while she tears it down from the inside. I studied her. She wasn't grandstanding. She was scared and furious. I appreciated both. Why tell me now? I asked. Sage hesitated. Because I overheard Ember on the phone with someone, I think a private equity contact. She said, once Nane's out, it's just optics and paperwork. She's already assuming you're gone. I closed the packet slowly, rested my hands on it. Thank you, Sage. This helps. A lot. She blinked. So, what are you going to do? I looked her dead in the eye. Nothing. Not yet. Wait, what? But they think I'm tired, out of touch. That I'll go quietly. Let them keep thinking that. The more certain they are, the more reckless they get, and reckless people leave trails. Sage sat back, processing. You're really going to let them think they've already won? I nodded once. Some games, I said, aren't won by attacking. Some are won by knowing exactly when to strike. 3 days after my meeting with Sage, I received a calendar invite. Subject, Leadership Alignment, Strategy Update. Attendees, Ember Morrison, Damon Morrison, select board members. Optional, Nayan Morrison. That last detail, optional, told me everything I needed to know. Still, I showed up. The meeting took place in one of the smaller boardrooms. Neutral walls, corporate art, a curved glass table meant to feel inclusive, but somehow always felt staged. Ember arrived first, wearing a muted gray pantsuit, hair tucked back, holding an iPad, and moving with the performative calm of a TED Talk speaker. Damon followed, smiling tightly. One of the junior board members nodded at him too eagerly. I sat down, said nothing, and waited. Ember stood. Thanks for making time, everyone. I know how full your schedules are, and I appreciate the commitment to looking forward. Looking forward. After reviewing industry benchmarks and consulting with external analysts, I've put together a short-term strategic proposal focused on leadership reorientation. She tapped her tablet, and the screen behind her lit up. The data tells us something clear. Startups that transition from founder-led to professionally diversified leadership within a 35 to 40-year window increased stability and innovation ROI by nearly 18%. A few heads nodded. I recognized the metric. It was from a Stanford white paper, taken wildly out of context. That's why, she continued, I'm proposing a temporary realignment of our executive board structure. With full respect to our founder, she gave me a rehearsed glance. We recommend that Nayen transition into an emeritus advisory role while a transitional leadership group evaluates next phase scalability. Translation: push the founder out gently, rebrand it as evolution. We believe this structure reflects where healthcare tech is headed: agile, young, visionary. She sat down like she'd just introduced a philanthropic initiative. No one clapped, but a few exchanged glances. Damon cleared his throat. Nan, he began, voice lowered. We've been talking about this for months now. I know it's a lot, but maybe it's time to rest a little. Let the company enter a new era. The words were delivered with empathy, but the eyes? The eyes were measuring my reaction. I folded my hands, looked at the boardroom screen, looked back at Ember. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. I appreciate the preparation. Ember gave a brief, tight smile, like she couldn't believe it was going this smoothly. Of course. We're all just trying to do what's best for the company. Naturally, I replied. You'll send me the proposal draft in writing? Absolutely. I nodded. Then, I look forward to reviewing it. And just like that, the meeting adjourned. That night, at home, Wade knocked on my door after dinner. Hey, Mom, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Weird question. Did you know Ember's been talking to the board? I had an idea, I said carefully. She told me today I should stop worrying about operations, that I'm better suited to long-term research innovation. I gave a small smile. You are good at research. Yeah, but I'm also good at leading people. She makes it sound like I'm some clueless lab rat. He was frustrated, conflicted, still loyal to everyone. Maybe she just wants what's best, he added, not fully convincing himself. I let him have that sentence. Let him believe it for now. When he left, I walked to my office, closed the door, opened the black file box labeled Founding Docs. The Vital Bridge Charter, 1989, drafted by me, co-signed by my late mentor, an ethics lawyer. One clause highlighted in red ink, Section 12.4, Founders' Protective Rights. In the event of corporate restructuring, no amendment shall override the founder voting provision or transfer of control clause without 75% supermajority and written consent of the founder. I ran my fingers over the paper. Ember hadn't read this far down. Damon had forgotten it even existed. Let them keep playing chess. I designed the board. The office of Patricia Chen and Associates was tucked into the 12th floor of a glass-paneled building in downtown Austin. Polished, modern, and exactly the kind of place where serious decisions get made behind soft walls and hard contracts. Patricia greeted me with a firm handshake and warm eyes. She looked like the kind of person who enjoyed being underestimated in boardrooms. Nan, she said, guiding me to the private conference room. I read your message. You said this wasn't about a traditional succession issue. What are we actually dealing with? I sat down, placed my leather folder on the table, and opened it to reveal the original Vital Bridge corporate charter and the corresponding Founders Trust Agreement. She glanced over them once, then again, slower, her brow furrowed. Is this the original copy? 1989, signed by me and my co-founder, never amended. Smart, she murmured. Nobody writes clauses like this anymore. We spent the next hour going line by line, side by side. Section 6.1, Founder Equity Restriction. All founder class shares are non-transferable outside of direct bloodline without unanimous board approval and notarized consent by the founding shareholder. Patricia looked up. So Damon couldn't legally reassign your shares to Ember even if you disappeared tomorrow? I nodded. Correct, and neither can Wade unless it's voluntary and documented. She made a small approving noise and kept reading. Section 7.3. Forfeiture upon betrayal. Any shareholder found to be engaged in acts of subversion or manipulation with intent to displace or defraud the founder shall forfeit all rights to current and future voting shares. She paused. That's bold language, and it's enforceable, assuming we define subversion. Good, I said, because Ember's moves fall squarely into that category. What about Damon? That's trickier, but if I can tie him to planning or concealment, he's in breach. Patricia leaned back in her chair. You're not just protecting yourself, you're preparing a play. Then she got to the founder's IP and governance trust, a legal structure I had quietly placed over my personal 51% shareholding stake in 2014, after my first cancer scare. Trust provision. Intellectual property, voting rights, and ownership authority held by the founder may only transfer to a named legal heir, direct descendant, or licensed proxy. No transfer shall occur through divorce, power of attorney, or corporate restructuring. Patricia blinked. So your shares aren't just shares? They're locked inside this trust? Exactly. Which means they can't be seized, split, or transferred, even under duress. And they don't know that. She exhaled slowly. A smile curled at the corners of her mouth. Nen, they think they're playing chess. But you're the only one who brought the rule book. We reviewed the trust's protections for another 20 minutes. All IP and patents I'd filed under Vital Bridge, still mine. The original back-end algorithm design, protected. The name Vital Bridge, trademarked under the trust, not the company. Patricia looked genuinely impressed. You've built a fortress. I had to. I knew this day might come. She tilted her head. So what's the plan? Are you going to confront them now? Get ahead of it? I shook my head, calm. Number. I'm going to let them finish what they started. Let them feel like they've won. Then, when they move in for the kill, I'll show them the claws they never saw coming. Patricia smiled, almost reluctantly. You sure you didn't miss your calling in litigation? I was too busy building a company, but I paid attention. By late April, I had become exactly what they needed me to be. Quiet, detached, tired. Damon started referring to me in meetings as the original architect rather than CEO. Ember began slipping phrases like legacy stewardship and generational pivot into board emails, and I smiled through all of it. The announcement came in a carefully worded memo from Damon. Subject: Proposal. Special Executive Session. In the spirit of transparency and long-term vision, the board is invited to an emergency shareholder meeting to formalize the interim executive leadership transition. This includes discussion of a temporary CEO appointment to support continuity during restructuring. It didn't say, replace Nayan, but it didn't have to. Attached was a tentative agenda with Ember's name listed under Operational Transition Discussion Lead. A copy also landed, by accident, in Wade's inbox. He showed it to me that evening. This says Ember's leading a governance panel, he said, eyebrows pulled tight. She doesn't even work for the company. I just shrugged and said, maybe it's a typo. Wade looked at me a moment longer, like he couldn't decide if I was in denial or knew something he didn't. 3 days before the meeting, Ember pulled her boldest move yet. She booked Wade on a last-minute trip to Seattle for a clinical tech showcase. It'll be good exposure, she said sweetly. The board will be handling high-level governance stuff. No reason to drag you through it. He didn't want to go, but she guilted him into it. I didn't stop him. Not yet. While Ember rehearsed her corporate ascension, Sage and I were quietly gathering ammunition. Sage had requested access to Ember's shared drive folder using a system account Ember had forgotten she once set up on Sage's old laptop. Inside, we found folders titled Investor Pitch, Confidential, Cap Table, Draft V2, Non-Public, Bridge Option Sheets, Q3 Targeting. Most damning of all, emails Ember had forwarded from the internal Vital Bridge Analytics dashboard to an outside investment firm, Grayson Capital, known for hostile takeovers. Subject: Soft Underbelly, Realignment Opportunity. Attachment: VB retention rate charts plus projected EBITDA adjustments post-founder exit. She wasn't just planning to take over. She was actively shopping the company. Sage sat on my porch that night, sipping ginger beer. She's got all the buzzwords down: vertical integration, predictive pivot, stakeholder elasticity. She's marketing a heist like it's innovation, I said. We forwarded everything to Patricia. That same week, Patricia and I drafted a formal equity warning notice citing breach of internal confidentiality, malicious intent toward founder-class shares, violation of the non-transferability clause in the trust. We didn't send it to the board right away. Instead, we pre-scheduled its delivery for 9 a.m. on the day of the meeting. It would arrive just after Ember made her power play, and right before the board signed anything irreversible. Patricia sent me a text the night before the meeting. All notices queued. Ready on my end, I replied. Let them walk into it. Then I turned off my phone, tucked my copy of the original 1989 charter into my tote bag, and got ready for the final act. The boardroom felt more like a theater that morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Austin skyline. The coffee station was restocked twice, and someone had even arranged a fresh orchid centerpiece on the table. They were setting the stage for a coronation. At 8:58 a.m., I walked in, calm, composed, and mostly ignored. Damon sat at the head of the table, already in executive transition mode. Charcoal suit, no tie, gold watch too prominent. Ember stood near the screen with a clicker in hand, dressed like someone about to pitch a Series B, sleek, branded, hungry. Glad you could join us, Nan, Damon said politely, with the fake warmth of a man who thinks he just got away with something. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. The meeting began with familiar language. This isn't about change for change's sake, Damon said, glancing down at his prepared remarks. This is about evolution, about aligning leadership with our next phase of growth. Standard playbook stuff, words that sounded forward-thinking while cutting ties with the past. Then Ember took the floor. She clicked to a slide labeled Executive Realignment Proposal and launched in with confidence that was a little too polished. Founders build, visionaries scale. Today, we honor what's been built and take the next step towards scale. She was good. I'll give her that. She spoke in bullet points, quoted market studies, cited performance deltas between founder-led firms and modern governance models, and then, with all the grace of a knife behind a smile. That's why, with full support of our COO and a majority of preliminary board alignment, I'm stepping in as interim CEO, effective immediately. There were no gasps, just silence, processing. One or two junior members nodded like they'd been prepped in advance. Others looked around for confirmation. Damon sat with a calm expression, like a man watching his chosen heir assume the throne. And that's when I stood up. Before we move forward, I said, I'd like to read a document into the record. All eyes turned to me. Ember didn't even try to hide her annoyance. Nan, I think we've already... No, you've proposed. Now you'll listen. This is the original founding charter of Vital Bridge, not the abridged version some of you may have skimmed. The full document. I walked to the front of the room. Section 12.4, I said clearly, holding the page up. Founder's Loyalty Clause. In the event that any party, internal or external, knowingly conspires to remove the founding shareholder through manipulation, misrepresentation, or collusion for personal gain, said party shall forfeit all claim to present and future equity, governance influence, or financial compensation tied to said role. Silence. Pin drop silence. I looked directly at Ember. You forwarded confidential performance data to outside investors without board approval. Her face tightened. Damon shifted in his seat. You colluded with an acting officer to orchestrate a leadership transition designed to bypass the trust's equity protections. I turned to the board. And in case anyone here believes this is a matter of opinion, not fact, you'll be receiving, right now, a formal legal notice from my counsel outlining the violations and the triggered enforcement of founder protections under Texas corporate trust law. Patricia's email hit inboxes at exactly 9:04 a.m. I watched the board members glance at their phones. One muttered, "Jesus Christ." Another turned visibly pale. Ember opened her mouth, but I cut her off. I built this company from nothing. I welcomed both of you into it, my husband as my partner, my daughter-in-law as family. You repaid that trust with ambition disguised as strategy. Then, to the room, this company is not a stepping stone for someone's ego. It is not for sale. And if anyone here would like to remain at this table next quarter, I suggest you reconsider where your loyalties lie. No one spoke. I returned to my seat, folded the document, poured myself a cup of water, and for the first time in months, I saw Ember without the mask, jaw clenched, eyes darting, calculating the damage. The fallout came faster than even I expected. By 10:30, the morning after the board meeting, I was sitting across from Detective Alvarez of the Austin Corporate Crimes Division. My attorney, Patricia Chen, slid the manila folder across the table with surgical precision. Inside, printouts of emails, metadata logs, investor outreach documents, and a full record of Ember's unauthorized access to internal financial dashboards. You're saying she tried to position the company for acquisition without approval? I'm saying, I replied, she tried to sell what she didn't own. Later that day, Patricia filed official civil complaints under breach of fiduciary duty, unauthorized disclosure of proprietary data, malicious interference with founder shareholder rights. The court issued a temporary freeze on Damon's personal equity stake, pending investigation. His lawyer tried to argue that he was misled by Ember. The emails told a different story. The board, now fully alert and on edge, held an emergency vote by noon. Result: 9-1 in favor of demanding Ember's immediate, unconditional resignation from all current and pending advisory roles. She was escorted out of the building that same afternoon. Not handcuffed, not dramatic. Just done. Wade came to see me that night. He didn't knock, just stood quietly in my kitchen doorway, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. His shoulders slumped, tie loosened, jaw clenched like it had locked halfway through a scream. "So it's all true," he said. I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. "Yeah, it's true. She used me, and she used you to get into this company." I didn't answer, because there wasn't much left to say. He sat at the table across from me, let the silence settle. Then his voice cracked. "God, I feel like such an idiot." I reached over, rested my hand over his. "You're not an idiot. She said I was too soft, that I couldn't handle leadership, and I believed her." Just then, Sage stepped into the room. She hadn't meant to intrude, but Wade saw her, and something broke loose. He stood abruptly, turned away, shoulders trembling. "You're not weak," Sage said, softly but firmly. "You just believed the person you loved. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Wade didn't answer right away, but he didn't leave either. Later, the three of us sat on the back porch. No legal documents, no pitch decks. Just three people breathing through the wreckage. "I thought I was building a life with her," Wade said. "You were," I said. "She wasn't. What happens now?" I looked up at the stars, breathed in the Texas night air. "Now we finish cleaning up, And then we build something better. 2 weeks after the board vote, Ember's name was formally removed from every internal document, staff portal, and executive file. She'd lawyered up quickly, of course, tried to spin the story as a miscommunication, a vision misalignment. But screenshots, audit trails, and internal policies left no room for narrative gymnastics. The evidence was clean, clinical. She didn't just lose her seat, she lost her credibility. Civil litigation moved forward. The damages weren't just financial, they were reputational. No serious investor would trust someone who tried to hijack a founder-led firm while secretly shopping it to competitors. She was radioactive. Damon, meanwhile, took a different approach. He emailed me 3 days after Ember's exit. Subject: private resolution discussion. Nen, I realize now how far things got out of hand. I'd prefer we handle this internally, as a family. Please let me know a time that works. I didn't reply. He followed up with a text. We don't have to burn everything down. We can fix this. But he wasn't trying to fix anything. He was trying to protect what was left of his own stake. The board had already voted to strip him of operational privileges. All he had now was a frozen equity position under legal review. The man who once stood beside me at a folding table with our first prototype now stood alone, surrounded by the fallout of his own silence. Meanwhile, Wade was recovering. Not quickly, not cleanly, but honestly. He came back to the office a few days at a time. No formal title yet, just a plain visitor badge and a quiet presence in the back of engineering meetings. He'd chime in during architecture reviews, sketch out smarter ways to scale our API for hospital networks. Never once tried to reclaim a spotlight. I don't need to lead right now, he told me. I just want to build again. So I let him, and in the background, Sage stayed, steady, quiet, and present. She didn't hover, didn't advise unless asked. But when Wade forgot to eat, she left protein bars on his desk. When he lost track of time, she walked him out. One afternoon, after a long internal audit session, Sage and I sat in my office, surrounded by folders, whiteboards, and half-drunk coffee. She turned to me, thoughtful. You ever think about starting something for women like you? Like us? Like us? I raised an eyebrow. Women who aren't loud enough to be noticed until someone tries to erase them. Founders, builders, fixers, but not flashy. The ones who get bulldozed by the embers of the world. I stared at her a moment, then smiled. I have. That week, we bought the domain. vitalwomen.org, a not-for-profit seed fund, mentorship platform, and legal resource center for underrepresented women building startups in high-pressure, high-risk spaces. No glossy PR, no launch party, just a quiet beginning, with capital allocated from the very trust Ember once tried to dismantle. This isn't about revenge, I told Sage. It's about prevention. We're not punishing Ember. We're stopping the next one before she starts. 6 months passed, not quietly, but constructively. VitalBridge emerged from the storm with a new shape, leaner, wiser, and more alive than it had been in years. We scrapped the old vertical org chart and replaced it with something simpler, cleaner. Multi-generational leadership, transparent voting, values-first decisions. We called it version 3. Wade returned, this time as chief technical advisor. No press release, no title politics. Just a nameplate on a glass door and a brain that still dreamed in system architecture. And Sage? She never planned to stay. But she did. She joined our legal strategy committee part-time, helped establish protocols for internal whistleblowing and founder protections. But more than that, she stayed beside Wade, not as a savior, not as a rebound, but as someone who understood that healing doesn't happen in headlines. One rainy Tuesday, I walked into what used to be my second apartment downtown, the one I received as part of the post-divorce settlement with Damon. We'd cleared it out, rewired it, painted over the memories. Now it held 6 desks, 3 folding tables, and a collection of wide-eyed, over-caffeinated young women building startups from nothing but grit and mock-ups. It was the pilot office for vital women. One of them handed me a thank you card as I left. The handwriting was uneven. The message simple. Thank you for not just saving your company. Thank you for reminding me that women like us still have a shot. I read it 3 times before folding it into my coat pocket. That night, I returned to the original Vital Bridge campus. The old wing, where our first servers still blinked quietly beneath floor panels we installed by hand. The glass in my office hadn't changed. Neither had the view. I sat down, watching the cooling towers and LED strips pulse in rhythm, like a resting heartbeat. My name wasn't on every wall anymore, and that was okay, because I didn't just leave a company. I planted a pattern, a structure, a standard. They called me a tired founder, a legacy liability, a relic. But they forgot something. This startup was built from my blood. It is not my past. It is me. And then I smiled, because for the first time in a very long time, it felt like enough.